Ah, pueden hacer lo mismo con sus cámaras. Pero sí queríamos anunciar que este espacio es multilingüe, entonces pueden escuchar esta sesión, este taller en el idioma de su preferencia. Simplemente nomás vayan al icono donde parece como un mundo, un icono de globo, y ahí pueden ustedes seleccionar su idioma preferido, en inglés o en español. Hoy nos acompañan nuestros intérpretes Alejandra y Susana, que los pueden apoyar en esta sesión. También quería anunciar que esta sesión va a tener temas potencialmente sensibles, entonces si en algún momento necesitan algún tipo de ayuda, aquí mi compañera Megan le pueden mandar un mensaje directo a ella y ella de allí les puede dar un tipo de apoyo. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Anna. I'm part of the TAASA multilingual team. And I just briefly want to announce, to mute yourself, just go ahead and look at the icon in the bottom of the microphone and you're able to mute, unmute there. We do ask you to stay muted as much as possible. And also you could do the same with your camera, turn it on or turn it off. But I just wanted to announce that this space is a multilingual space. You are able to select English or Spanish, the language of your preference. Today we have our interpreters that are accompanying us that are able to provide this session in your preferred language. Alejandra and Susana will be part of that. And so for you to select that option, you just go towards the bottom of your screen. There's a little globe there that says interpretation. If you don't see it, just select the three dots. And then you can either click English or Spanish, and you'll be able to listen to the session in your preferred language. And finally, one last announcement. Just a content warning today, the discussions could be potentially triggering. And so if at any point you need support, you're more than welcome to message my colleague here, Megan. You can send her a direct message and she could go ahead and offer you support and direct it to the correct person. Thank you. Welcome. Bienvenidos todos.
Hey, everybody. My name is Megan Perkins, and I want to introduce our speaker for today, who's Emiliano Diaz de Leon. He is our men's engagement specialist here at TAASA. And after more than a decade of experience working for several domestic and sexual violence centers in Texas, he joined TAASA in 2008, and he now provides training and technical assistance on the prevention of domestic and sexual violence to organizations and institutions around the state and the country. And in addition, he founded and coordinates the statewide prevention initiative, Texas Men Speak, and SPEAK stands for Supporting Prevention Education, Advocacy, and Knowledge. So I'll go ahead and let Emiliano begin.
Thank you, Megan and Austin, and Anna. I don't know why I said Austin, but I'm thinking of my home in Austin, of course. Thank you so much for everyone who is joining us today. I'm sure there are folks from Austin, maybe. Shout out to Austin, to the Austin folks. Yeah, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Emiliano Diaz Leon. I am the Men's Engagement Specialist here at TAASA. I am speaking to you from Denton, Texas, the location of our in-person conference. We're so thrilled that you could join us for our virtual conference today. And I'm even more happier that you could be with me this afternoon for today's workshop, Empowering Change, Improving Services for Male Survivors. So I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy to see so many friends and colleagues. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I want to make sure you have my contact information, so you'll find it there at the bottom of the screen. I encourage all of you to reach out to me. So please make a note of my email address. You also see my social media handle. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. So feel free to follow me there, and you're welcome to DM me on all my socials. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, or if you need any assistance, feel free to reach out to me on social media, or just shoot me an email. If you share anything today, please tag TAASA. So if you're posting anything, any pictures or any comments or anything from today's workshop, I want to encourage you to share on social media. Use the hashtag menhealing and tag us here at TAASA. Tag me as well. I'd love to see it. and I'd love to share it later on. So I'm thrilled that you could be with me this afternoon. And of course, like Anna said, this can be a tricky subject, right? And I want to acknowledge that there are people who are watching this who may identify as survivors or may identify as male survivors. And I want to encourage you to take care of yourself. So at any point, if you need to walk away, you need to get some water, you need to take a break, you need to leave the webinar, that's okay. So I definitely encourage you to take care of yourself. Especially if you have a family member or friend who's a male survivor, please share this with them. I hope that they feel seen and heard, and more importantly, believed. And I hope you will take that message forward after today's webinar. So again, thank you so much for joining me. I want to encourage you as much as possible because we can't all share our audio, and so I want to encourage you to use the chat as much as possible. I will be monitoring it. Megan will be monitoring it. So I want to encourage you to share as much as possible in the chat. Well, let's jump in. So I want to encourage you to introduce yourself. There are 23 of us in here. So please share your name, your title, your organization, and what brought you to today's webinar. Why this particular webinar? Is it because you wanted to see my beautiful face? Is it because you are curious about this particular issue? You've worked with some male survivors and you want to just kind of beef up and improve your services? Or so if you want to use that chat, introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about why you're here today, and I'll call some of those answers out. I'm here today because of you, all of you. I'm here because of the male survivors that we serve here in Texas. So I'd love to hear from some of you. Don't be shy. All right, y'all are being shy. I don't know why. Okay, there we go. Savannah, welcome. So glad that you could join us. See, my friends at Austin, I knew there were people from Austin here. Savannah from SAFE, thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to see you, and I appreciate your willingness to learn more about male survivors. Yeah, SAFE is my old stomping ground, so welcome. That's where I got my start. Thank you so much for being here. Linda from Gainesville, Texas, just up the road. We're so happy that you could join us, Linda. Thank you for being here, case manager. Autumn, a sexual assault advocate with Hardin County Crime Victims Assistance Center. Thank you so much for being here. You want to be part of the change, encourage male survivors to seek help and support and come forward. Now that I see that how there are less resources for them, and I hope to see that change in the future. Me too. And everyone who is in here is part of that change, right? I think that's such a wonderful vision that we can all hold together, is that we are part of that change, right? We are a resource. I want you to think about you as a resource, not just professionally in terms of your organization or institution, but I want you to think about yourself as a resource for male survivors. And that's invaluable because we all know, love, live with, work with, worship with the male survivor. Yeah, Linda wants to know how to better provide services to male survivors. Thank you. Lana, my friend, it's so good to see you. Primary prevention coordinator from Highland Lakes, all the way in Marble Falls. We're so happy that you're here. Yes, and it's great to have your folks here. And Michael's doing some great work. So I'm really excited about the Texas Men Speak chapter in Marble Falls. And if you're curious to learn more about Texas Men Speak, reach out to me. Thank you so much for being here. Christine Smith, Texas Advocacy Project. Shout out to the Texas Advocacy Project. If you don't know the Texas Advocacy Project, you need to learn about them. They're an important resource, especially for male survivors. So shout out to the Texas Advocacy Project. Christine, thank you so much for joining us. You want to learn more about, be more aware of how to be trauma-informed with male survivor clients. Thank you. Yes. Hopefully we can explore all of that together. Look at all of y'all. Gloria Salazar from SANE in El Paso. Thank you, SANE nurse. in El Paso, thank you so much for being here. Look at all of y'all. I wish I had more time to read everybody's comment. There's so many. Y'all are amazing. Y'all stepped up. When I said, don't be shy, you stepped up and shared. So let me look here. I think we're missing services for men. So Stephanie shared that from Thriving Hearts Crisis Center. Formerly Guadalupe Valley Family Violence Shelter. I didn't know you guys had changed your name, so that's great. Thank you so much for being with us. Look at all the amazing people who are here. One of the things I want to encourage you to do is to reach out to each other, right? Connect with each other. I want you to be a resource for each other. There's some amazing people in the room today. I'm really grateful to all of you for being here. I want you to go and just scroll through and see who's here and why they're here today. And Amy said, for example, she's the program manager from the Forensic Outreach. I could read all of these all day. So I love this. From Texas A&M University Health Science Center, become more educated about male survivors. That's why we're here today, right? So these are all wonderful, beautiful reasons for us to be here. This is why I'm here. Because I hope that I can impart and share with you some of the lessons I've learned and some of the lessons I've learned from advocates, as well as from male survivors here in Texas, as well as what the research is showing us in terms of how to better provide services to male survivors. So I'm going to scroll down because there's all these wonderful people. Oh, another friend from Safe Alliance in Austin. So thank you so much for being with us, Edia. Yeah, our friends in San Marcos. Look at that. So a lot of really great folks from around the state. Thank you so much for being here. There are 28 of us here. I love to see it. And I hope that you're enjoying the virtual conference. And thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. All right, let's continue. So I'm sure all of you, I hope, know about TAASA, know who we are. But for those folks who are new to TAASA, I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about who we are. I've been with TAASA for 17 years, and during that time, I have been a member. I was not a member, interesting enough, before I came to work for TAASA, which was really unfortunate. I didn't realize the power that my membership had and the benefits that membership gave me. So many of you are part of organizations that are organizational members of TAASA, but I want to encourage each and every one of you to become an individual member of TAASA. And so depending on your role, whether you're an active service military member, you're a survivor, a student, a law enforcement officer, there is a membership category for you. And so I hope that you will consider joining us as an individual member like myself. I'm really honored to be a part of this organization and to contribute to our mission, which is very simple, right? So if you look on the screen, we are the statewide advocacy organization that works to eliminate sexual violence through public policy. So we just wrapped up our legislative session, and we blew everything out of the water. I mean, it was such a powerful legislative agenda where we pretty much were able to accomplish our entire legislative agenda and ensure continued funding for sexual assault programs, holding perpetrators and offenders accountable, and ensuring that that legislation is more responsive to victims and survivors here in Texas. And so I hope you will stay tuned and you will learn more about our accomplishments this legislative session. So we'll be releasing our legislative report here soon. So look for that. And please let us know if you have any questions or if you need any assistance with the application of these new policies and laws here in Texas. So we're excited about sharing that with you here soon. A big part of what we do is train. That's what today is. That's what the conference is. It's about training, building your capacity, building your ability to provide, to continue to provide and expand those services for victims and survivors of sexual violence. In addition, Megan and myself are part of the prevention team. So we provide a tremendous amount of training and technical assistance related to primary prevention, prevention education, outreach, et cetera. So if you or your organization need support, we have an amazing team of experts like Megan that provide training and technical assistance around prevention. In addition, Anna is part of our support teams to programs. So you're connecting with two staff who provide really important services to our organizations and institutions around the state. So they provide support to programs that serve survivors of sexual violence. So any issues related to sexual violence, we want to be your go-to. I want to be your go-to man. So if you don't know who to contact here at TAASA, I want you to contact me and I will connect you to the best resource. So please reach out to me, email me, call me. Like I said, DM me on social media. Pull me to the side if if you see me around the state. I'd love to have a conversation with you about your needs and make sure that you're connected to TAASA. But again, please become a member. You can do that at taasa.org. Please become an individual member. We'd love for you to join us, and we count on your support to make our work and our mission possible. So let's jump right in. So I'm sure all of you, I hope, at this point, have seen Jorge's story. Jorge's story Jorge is the only male survivor that's part of our campaign called Speak Up, Speak Out. You can find Jorge's story along with all of our survivors that are part of the Speak Up, Speak Out campaign on our YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, go right now, smash that subscribe button and join us on YouTube. You also have access to the recordings of all the virtual sessions from the conference. So we're very excited about sharing this recording on YouTube. And so you'll have access to it. And it's a great resource that you can share with your friends, family members, coworkers, with survivors. So anyway, follow us on YouTube. I want to share Jorge's story, and it has English subtitles, and hopefully our interpreters will be able to interpret for you into Spanish. So I'm going to play it for you. So if you just take a moment, it's a very short PSA, and I'll let Jorge speak for himself.
My name is Jorge Antonio Renault, and when I was 19, I was raped repeatedly in a county jail. 2 weeks after that rape, I just walked into a Church's Fried Chicken with a rifle and just robbed it. As a man who's a survivor of rape, there was so much expected of me. I'm supposed to be a certain way. I'm supposed to act a certain way. I'm supposed to always come from a position of strength, never being able to show weakness. In our culture, there's something called aguantate. That has to do with endure. And we're taught to endure. We're not taught to say habla con todos, or to speak with everyone, or to share what's going on with you, or to talk to me about your life. And I'm at war with that I'm showing more vulnerability, more weakness. You want to control how people see you. And I think admitting to this, you give up that control. You say, yeah, this is me, and this happened to me, and I'm sorry about all that's happened since. You have to be willing to speak out about this. You have to be willing to break through that wall of silence. You have to be willing to say, no, I'm not going to shut up about it, and I'm going to tell it to you, and I'm going to tell it to the next person, because I didn't deserve it. No one deserves this to be done to them. But in a personal sense, I had to say something. I had to break through the silence that was killing me. So ultimately, that's what it is for me, okay? It's putting me back together.
So I want you to take out your phone, because all of you are watching from your office or watching from home, or maybe you're watching from your car. I don't know where you are right now, because you can pretty much tune in from anywhere. But I want you to take out your phone, and I want you to go to our YouTube channel, and I want you to share Jorge's story. And I want you to post it to your social media, right? Whether you're on X, whether you're on Blue Sky, whether you're on Facebook. I want you to share Jorge's story. It's a powerful story. It's a story that deserves to be heard, right? Because one of the things Jorge talks about is breaking through that silence. When a male survivor does that, that's the most courageous act in terms of sharing his story. And most of the time, you're going to be the first person that male survivor tells a story. I'll share something really quickly that happened here at conference. I was speaking to a vendor that's supporting us here at conference. They're with an organization. I happened to be walking by and I introduced myself, and they shared with me that they had recently attended a session that I had just done for Darcy, the Dallas Area Rape Crisis Center. I did a session on male survivors and mental health. And so I encourage you to check that out. They just posted the recording of that. But one of the things she shared with me is that a friend, a longtime friend of hers, a male, shared with her that he was sexually abused by a priest when he was a child. He had never disclosed that to anyone, and he was disclosing that to her for the first time. Right? That's just one of countless examples. There are probably folks in this room who have that experience, right? Who somebody learns about the work that you do, and they may disclose their own experiences of sexual violence, but boys and men in particular may come to you and disclose those experiences. What a gift to be given, the fact that that person trusts you with their story. And for many men like Jorge, this was the first time he shared his story. He had never shared his story privately or publicly with anybody until he did this PSA for TAASA. We are really grateful to Jorge and all the other survivors that participated in the campaign. But for Jorge in particular, this middle-aged man, to finally share his story of sexual abuse, right, that occurred when he was incarcerated as a juvenile, right? He actually is an activist and an organizer. He supports young people who are incarcerated. He does a lot of criminal justice reform for juveniles. He continues to do the work. He's an inspiration, not just to me, but to many others, and especially to other male survivors, not here in the state of Texas and around the country. So Jorge is just one of millions of men who have experienced sexual violence. And so I want to just kind of start with the reality, right? That 2.1 million adult men in Texas, like Jorge, like myself, have experienced some form of sexual assault in their lifetime. What I will tell you about the statistic, it's the most current. Somebody said, this is the most current statistic that you have? And I'm like, yes. There hasn't been a lot of research conducted around male survivors, specifically here in Texas. So this is actually the only statistic that we have that is Texas specific. So it's daunting, right? When you think about 2.1 million men in Texas, like I said earlier, that means that each one of you knows a man who's experienced some form of sexual violence. Whether that's a family member, a friend, a loved one, a partner, a relative, a coworker, somebody you worship with, somebody you work with, right? This is the reality of sexual violence here in Texas. This is why we're having today's webinar. And that's why I'm so happy that you're here, right? So how do we raise awareness? How do we reach these men, right? And so in today's webinar, I'm excited to share with you a very new and exciting resource that will give you the tools that will hopefully inspire you and your organization to innovate, to expand, to enhance the services that you're providing. And so we're launching a new resource that we're announcing for the first time today here at TAASA. I've been developing this resource for the last 2 years. And I want to share with you some of the content, right? And give you an example of what's included. So when it comes out, you know how to use it, right? So you're the first people to see and to hear some of the details of this guidance document that is informed by male survivors, by research, by advocates in the field. And I've been working on this thing for the last 2 years, so I'm super excited to be sharing it with you today. So let me share some of the contents of this guidance document with you so you can get a sense of the kind of what's included in the guidance document. Of course, this is a disclaimer, like all things, right? This is funded by the Office of the Attorney General, and we're really grateful to the Office of the Attorney General for this funding. And so you'll find a disclaimer in there. You'll also find a really important guide in terms of how to use this guide, right? How do I use this as an individual, as an advocate, as an organization, an institution, right? It's really important that you understand the purpose of this guide because that's all it is, right? It's just another tool in your toolbox or your tool belt. I hope you have a tool belt too. That's kind of cool. It introduces you to male survivors of sexual violence. It discusses how to improve hotline access for male survivors of sexual violence. So for many of us that provide 24-hour hotline or online services for victims and survivors of sexual violence, it helps us really improve those hotline services for male survivors. In addition, there's a section called medical advocacy for male survivors, and we're going to spend a little bit of time during today's webinar exploring some of the strategies that you're going to find in that particular section. In addition, we're going to explore increasing access to emergency housing. So when we talk about male survivors, one of the things that we have failed to discuss and to really make applicable to our work is providing emergency housing to male survivors. Where do we have space within our emergency shelters for men, especially for male survivors, right? Whether it's a single man or a man with children, right? We want to ensure that they have access to emergency housing as well. So in the guide, you'll find some specific guidance that will help you design shelter services for those men. One of the important things that we know in terms of raising awareness, we just wrapped up a couple of months ago, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Can you believe that? Right? And hopefully one of the things you talked about was male survivors of sexual violence. But this guide gives you some strategies, some ways of talking about the experiences of male survivors of sexual violence and how to reach out to them, how to raise awareness in your community, how to engage them to ensure that they're seen and heard. And then broadening our community education efforts on male survivors. How do we inform? How do we educate? How do we build the capacity of our community, our neighbors, our organizations, our institutions, and our communities to support male survivors? Because we know that a male survivor may not come to us first. They may go to their place of worship. They may go to their pastor. They may go to a family member or friend. They may, disclose this to a coworker. So we want to ensure that everybody is empowered to support the male survivor in their community. And so there's a great resource there to help us do that. Enhancing support groups for group services for male survivors of sexual violence. One of the things in terms of our research here at TAASA around services for male survivors, one of the things that we noticed that unfortunately, there's a gap in services in terms of support group services. We're doing a great job of providing individual therapy, counseling, peer support, etc. But one of the things that we're failing to do is to create and to provide support groups. And so we explore that a little bit, provide some guidance around being able to do that effectively in your community. And then there's a whole collection of the resources. There are not many resources that exist for male survivors. There are a number of male organizations, and we'll share those with you here shortly, that you can share with your coworkers, with your advocates, with your volunteers, but especially with male survivors, right? These are the most important and valuable resources that we have, but it also demands us to support these organizations, right? They're trying to do the best that they can with the resources that they have, but they need our support. And so it's a great opportunity for you to learn more about those organizations. And I encourage all of you to support them. And then of course you'll find references because like I said, there's very little resources that are available. But there's very little research around some of these issues. So you'll find references to all of the research that we conducted, all the research that is available that's been conducted about male survivors. So if you want to explore more, if you want to learn more about male survivors, learn about their experience, you can dive in if you like reading research papers. There's some great references in the guide for you. I do want to give a shout out to Maddie George, who is our graphics artist here, designer here at TAASA. She created all these amazing graphics, and you'll see them throughout today's webinar for this guidance document. So I hope you enjoy them. They're so beautiful. One of the unique things about this guidance document is that Maddie hand drew every graphic that you're going to see. So they are so beautiful, and we're so excited to be able to share them with you today. And then, of course, acknowledging all the great contributors to this project, especially the Office of the Attorney General who funded this guidance document. It makes it possible for me to do my work here at TAASA. So shout out to our funder and, to all of our funders, right? The Office of the Attorney General is the primary funder for sexual assault programs here in Texas. So we're grateful to them for their support of this project. So let's get into it. I want to tell you a little bit more in detail about each section of the guidance document. And at the same time, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks when you think about these issues, right? So the first section of the guidance document is an introduction to male survivors. One of the things that we know is that we have to define the forms of sexual violence that boys and men experience and the impact of trauma on their lives, right? It's important for us to understand what that means, right? That may be different for male survivors. One of the things that, if you attended the Darcy lunch and learn that I did on mental health, one of the questions I got asked is, what language do you use? Like, what do you say to a male survivor? And I'm going to give you a simple trick. It's just to be a mirror and to mirror the language that they're using, how they're describing their experiences of sexual violence or sexual abuse. Mirror that back to them. Don't assume anything about their relationship or where the sexual assault occurred or when. Allow them to tell you their story, and your job is to listen, to actively listen, and to mirror that story back to them. Use their language, whether they call it rape, whether they call it sexual assault, whether they call it molestation, whatever they call it, reflect that language back to them, right? This inappropriate thing happened to me, right? So whatever it is, the language that they use, um, reflect that back. So that's the most important thing that we can do. But it's really important for us to listen and to learn from male survivors like Jorge, so that we understand their lived experiences. And so I encourage you to read and to learn. And the resources that I share with you, there's some great collections of materials so you can really understand and hear from male survivors directly about their lived experience. And so if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find a story from Michael Gwynn that participated in the Texas Men's Story Project. Michael Gwynn is an actor, a spoken word artist, an activist and an organizer. He's a veteran as well. And he shared his story with TAASA. We're really grateful to him. And it's a powerful spoken word piece, but that's the best way for us to understand the experiences of male survivors of sexual violence. So not from me, not from TAASA, from other male survivors. So listen to their stories, right? Listen to their stories, their experiences. There's some great documentaries that are included in the resources. I encourage you to watch them and to share them, to screen them in your community. There's so many opportunities for us to hear directly from male survivors, especially the male survivors in your life. There's a lot that we can learn from them. A lot more that you can learn from them than you can learn from me. So, like I said, the next section in the guidance document is about improving hotline access for male survivors of sexual violence. And at any point, I better say this now because Megan is waiting for you to ask comments and to make comments, not ask comments, to ask questions and to make comments. So I want you to drop those in the chat. So if you have questions about anything I say, or if you have a response to anything I'm saying, if you have a resource that you want to share, drop it in the chat. We're here to learn from each other. Like I said, more than for me. So there's a lot of expertise in this room, a lot of folks who are doing really great work. So if you're doing these things well, let us know so that we can reach out to you, so that your peers can reach out to you and access that kind of support and information and learn from you about how to improve these services. So the next section is about improving hotline access for male survivors of sexual violence. So it focuses on how rape crisis centers, hotline advocates can strengthen helpline support for men, right? It's a centerpiece of what we do, right? The 24-hour hotline is a key source of accessing information, support, and services for every sexual assault program. I want you to go to your organization and I want you to look at how many of those calls are from men. If you keep that, if you collect that kind of data from the people who contact your hotline, see how many of those are men. And that'll help you determine how, like, and where you need to improve services. Do male survivors know that there's a 24-hour hotline available? Do they know that that resource is available to them? Is it accessible to men with different needs that may speak Spanish, for example? So these are all considerations that we explore in this particular section, but one of the things I want to encourage you is just to take a look at yourself, at your organization. What kind of language are you using? How do you promote hotline services? How do you respond to male callers? Do you treat them as potential offenders or perpetrators, or do you see them as survivors? Right? These are all important questions to ask for ourselves that we address in the section that really is intended to improve those services, right? We have so much work to do, and we've already done so much in terms of victims and survivors of sexual violence. So there is an opportunity for us to enhance and to improve these services for male survivors to ensure that they have the same access that we've worked so hard for girls and women to be able to provide those services to boys and men, right? And I know some of you are doing that really well. So shout out to you. Thank you so much for putting in the work, for being responsive to not just girls and women in your community, but to boys and men. Some of you are doing that really well. And that's the place where I think you can learn from each other, from your sister centers here in Texas. And so I want you to be a model for each other, encouragement for each other, not just from TAASA. So thank you so much for doing that work. Questions, comments, drop them in the chat. Megan is waiting. She's ready to answer. Let's talk a little bit about medical advocacy. And so we're going to spend a little bit more time here because I think this is the thing that I keep on hearing from every sexual assault program around the state. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek into the guide and some of the guidance that you're going to find in the guide in this document. So let's talk about medical advocacy for male survivors. So in this section, we explore the role that advocates play in navigating male victims through the health system, right? I saw that we have SANE nurses in here. Thank you so much for your work, for your services. Many of you have provided sexual assault nurse examinations for male survivors and for boys, unfortunately. We know that that service is, again, not just for girls and women, but for anybody who experiences sexual violence. And there are many nurses around the state who have that experience of providing that examination for boys and men. So there's a lot that other sexual assault nurses can learn from each other. Yeah. Megan.
Emiliano, I just wanted to interrupt really quickly to let you know that in the chat, Michelle Sims asked, I may have missed this, but where is this guide at and how do we attain a copy?
Ooh, I love it. So as you know, nothing is easy, right? Like I said, this has been a 2-year project, and I worked so hard. I was so hopeful that I would have it ready to share with you today. Unfortunately, it's not ready. It will be ready and available by the end of the month. So we have all of your contact information, everybody who registered for today's session. You will be the first to receive this resource. So I'm super excited. I want you, and that's a great question because I was waiting to the end to tell you. But I'll tell you now, you will be the first person, you'll be the first group of people to receive the guidance document because you're here today, right? That's why you're here. And that's why we're super excited about launching it from our virtual conference. You're the only group of people that are going to have an early access to the guidance document. So I will be emailing it to all of you. And I want you to ask questions. I want you to share it with your colleagues, your coworkers. This resource is specifically designed for sexual assault programs. And so we want you to use it. And so I'll be sending it by email to all of you at the end of July. So look for that in your email. And then of course, we'll be sending out and have hard copies available for folks to order directly from our website. So if you go to taasa.org, we have a materials page and it will be available there, and you can order copies for yourself or for your coworkers or your colleagues, as well as a digital copy that you can download and share as a PDF. So Thank you for asking. That's an important question. So it'll be coming out this month, but again, you guys are going to be the first ones to get it. So I'm so excited to share it with you. And again, I really had hoped it would be ready to go. We have a little, we have a little, we had a little bit, a few more edits that we had to make, but it's really close to being done and it will be available at the end of the month. So look for that in your email box later this month. So thank you, Megan, for that question. Any other questions or comments?
I do want to unmute really quickly to say that we do have a few people who did not register before, so I'm not sure if we have your email, but please feel free to private message me and I can add it to the list to make sure that you will also get a copy of the guidance document.
Yeah, no, thank you, Megan, for saying that. Yeah, if you just tuning in to today's webinar and you didn't register necessarily for this session, yeah, share your email address. And again, we have access to the report. We have access to everyone's email address that attended today's webinar. But yeah, give it to Megan so we can make sure that we add you to that list. And again, you're going to be the first group of people to get it because you came to this webinar during the virtual conference. So you're very special. So thank you for that, Megan. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you'll find in the medical advocacy. So I wanted to give you some practical things that you can do. So while we don't have the time to go through each section of the guidance document, I did want to specifically talk about some of the things that you can apply right now to your medical advocacy services. So I want to start with what we call key practices. So in the guidance document, you will find these referred to as key practices. These are things, again, based on the research, based on what male survivors are telling us, what advocates are doing. So these are some of the best practices that I have seen in the field over the last couple of years in terms of the development of this guidance document. So the first thing that we do, right, as advocates is provide emotional support. This is a great example of what that looks like, right? That requires us to actively listen to male survivors, one of the things that we talked about, and to create a non-judgmental environment, right? That's the most important thing that we can do. So when we are in that hospital setting, when a man is there to go through the examination, it's really important that we are listening, that we are focused on his needs, that we are responsive to his questions, his concerns, that we are advocating on his behalf, right? And that means that we have to create a non-judgmental environment. It is already difficult for a man to come forward to report the abuse. It is even harder for them to come forward and to go through the examination process. We see probably a lot more boys who are coming forward, of course, as a result of sexual abuse, getting an examination and going through a forensic interview at a child advocacy center, for example. So, folks may have a lot more experience working with children survivors of boy survivors of sexual abuse. But when a man comes in, he deserves the same attention and support that a girl or a woman would receive from us. So providing emotional support is key. One of the other things that we do as advocates is advocate for privacy and confidentiality, especially if you are from a small rural community and a man is coming in for a sexual assault nurse examination or any other health services. We want to ensure that his privacy and his confidentiality are protected. That requires us and everyone who has contact with this man in that setting that they protect his personal information, that we reassure him that none of this information is going to be shared with the public, right? Unless he chooses to, right? Unless he chooses to disclose his experiences, unless he chooses to disclose his information, all of that is kept private and is confidential, right? And so we know that victims and survivors can choose to have evidence collected and never used, right? They can go through the process of going through an examination and collecting the evidence, but they don't have to do anything with it, right? They don't have to pursue criminal charges. They don't have to do anything that they don't want to do. They determine, they get to decide for themselves how they want to proceed, right? How they want to proceed with their case, whether they want to report it to law enforcement. Again, unless it's a minor, right? We know that children in particular don't have that choice, that we are all required mandatory reporters when it comes to child abuse, including child sexual assault. And so, but when it comes to an adult man, he gets to decide, he gets to determine who and when he discloses information about his sexual assault, including that process of accessing a SANE exam. And we have some nurses here who I'm sure have their own experiences of helping to inform, to ensure that male survivor knows that his information is protected. Megan, did anybody share anything in chat? I noticed there were like 4 comments in there. I don't have it open, so.
Oh, yes, we got a few emails, so I'm just making sure to add those
Oh,
over to
okay.
the list.
Excellent. Thank you. But yeah, if you're that we have seen nurses here. So if you have any feedback, any thoughts, any, please drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you in terms of your own experiences with male survivors in the hospital, in that hospital setting, conducting that exam. Again, you're the experts. I'm just an old advocate. So part of what we do, right? Another key practice is providing trauma-informed care. I think at this point, we all know what trauma-informed means, right? That means it's just in the most simplest terms, it means that we are responsive to the needs of survivors, right? That they come first, not our desires or what we think or what they should do, or it really is responsive to their needs, right? At that particular moment, which will change over time, right? So one of the things that we are all called to do is to collaborate with healthcare providers. SANE nurses are our partners, right? They're our colleagues. They do important work. They don't do that work alone. They partner with us as advocates, right? We're privileged to be able to access that space and to provide the emotional support, to share information, to just be present, to be supportive to that male survivor while that examination is taking place. So we need to collaborate with healthcare providers, whether that's establishing an MOU, like ensuring, our roles and discussing our partnership with our SANE nurses so they know how and when to contact us, so that we are accessible and available to all sexual assault survivors, but especially boys and men. And we need to understand, not just as advocate, but SANE nurses need to also understand the unique needs of male survivors, right? Male survivors are unlike any other survivor. So if you've never worked with a male survivor, you don't know, right? And I want you to be open to that experience, the possibility. I want male survivors to see you as a resource. I want them to know that you are ready to respond to their needs, right? To support them, to walk them through all of these processes, especially the SANE exam or other addressing other healthcare needs that they may have in the future. So in addition to that, one of the things that we do as advocates is we explain the procedure, right? The process. We know that male survivors, when they enter that space, for any survivor, but especially men, when they don't think it's the norm, right? They're already a tremendous amount of shame and guilt, fear, that they're bringing into that into that setting. One of the things that our job is to reduce as much as possible their anxiety, right? And to help survivors feel informed so that they know every step of the process. If you've been fortunate to be a hospital advocate, if you've been witness to this process, if you collaborate with amazing SANE nurses that we have in the room today or in your community, then you've been witness to this example of providing and informing the survivor of what you are doing, right? To ensure that we're not re-traumatizing the victim. Or again, so they feel empowered, they feel informed, they feel prepared, and they understand the process, right? So if you've never, if you've never familiarized yourself with what is collected, I encourage you to do that. Look at that kit, see what is collected and how it is collected, and you can understand how important it is to be informed throughout this process, especially for boys and men. It's really key that you again help to reduce their anxiety to ensure that they have the support that they need. And then one of our roles as advocates in that space is to connect male survivors to the most appropriate resources, right? So whether it's counseling, support groups, post-examination, this is really key. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you need? What information do you need to have, right? How can you take care of yourself? Where can you get support post-examination? What resources are available, right? Maybe you have a waiting list, but maybe they have insurance and they're able to access private therapy with their insurance. Encourage them to find a therapist that is familiar and provides services to male survivors, right? You can look at the reviews. You want to encourage that male survivors to look at the reviews of different clinicians and therapists in their community to determine, the best one for them, the most responsive, the best trained folks that have training around sexual violence or male survivor issues, or who are really trauma informed. So as an example, you want to connect the male survivors to those resources, and it may not be your program, right? It may not be your program, and that's okay, right? They may not yet see you as a resource. They may not think of you yet as a resource for male survivors, but one of the things that we can do is we can connect them to those resources that exist. And one of the things I will tell you, a lot of male survivors, when they come forward, they may prefer just to access resources online, right? So again, share the resources that we're going to share with you here in a few minutes. That can be a really important tool in terms of informing and educating them and connecting them with other male survivors, with peer-led support groups. For example, Men Healing has just started a series for male survivors that's peer-led. What a great alternative. They participate in these peer-led support groups online that have a clinician that's part of that process, right? They've developed a phenomenal curriculum for male survivors. If your organization, institution can't provide that kind of support, it exists. And it exists online, and male survivors, again, may be more comfortable or more likely to access those services when they're ready. Not on your timetable, not on your organization's timetable, when they are ready. But the best thing that we can do is to provide that information to survivors. So some of the tricks, these are the kinds of things that you're going to find in the guidance document. I'm just super excited, as you can tell, sharing this with you. All right. So this is your chance, because you guys have been quiet in the chat. Was there a key practice that I just shared with you about medical advocacy that stood out to you, and why? Drop it in the chat. Come on, y'all. I want to see what you'll think. So the things that I just talked to you about, what stood out to you? What are you like? Oh, I didn't think about that, Emiliano. Like, that's really interesting. Tell me more. Tell me more. It takes you guys a minute. I know it's a chat, right? So you gotta like type. Takes you a minute, so I'm gonna give you a minute. What key practice stood out to you and why? And as you can see, I do this on purpose so I can drink water. If you do online presentations, you know what I'm talking about. If you guys don't share, I'm gonna move on. Megan, was there any, like, I'll ask you, I don't know if Anna's there still with you, but Megan, was there anything that stood out to you?
I think just in general, the resources that you've shared so far, I'm not Even though I work obviously in anti-sexual violence, I feel like so much emphasis gets placed specifically on non-men. And so like some of the resources that you were talking about, I think you just mentioned one with men's healing. I am not personally like aware of those. So it's nice and like it's eye-opening to hear about those. And like Emiliano said, later we'll share a document that has a lot of these resources linked. And I encourage everybody to go through that because I've just been peeking. And it's so full. And I see in the chat that Savannah said,
Yeah.
maybe not a key practice, but recognizing that our own organization may not be the best resource for male survivors, and that is okay. We just need to find things that are a better fit to better support the survivor.
Thank you, Savannah, for saying that. That is so true. Right. I'm so glad that you that's okay, right? I don't want you to feel like, okay, Emiliano told me, or I have to use this guidance document. We have to do all the things that Emiliano lays out. No, the guidance document is just that, is a guide. It's just a map. It's just a map to get to that destination in terms of really ensuring that our services are accessible to boys and men in the same way that they are to girls and women. That takes time, right? Understanding patients' perception of assault is key. Absolutely, right? Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important, right? Again, it requires us to actively listen. So I encourage you to practice active listening with your peers, so that you're prepared to really listen. That requires us to put aside any distraction, for us to be present, and for us to listen and to be a mirror, right? And to believe. That's the most important thing that we can do as a family member, friend, a coworker, even as an advocate. It may be really difficult for us because we're not encouraged to believe boys and men because, for all kinds of reasons. Uh, and it was difficult for me, I will say, as an advocate, for me to believe, to see boys and men as victims and survivors of sexual violence or sexual abuse. I would immediately think of them as perpetrators or potential perpetrators, or, why are they calling? Who are they calling about? They're looking for their partner, you know. So I also held those beliefs. I struggled with this concept of just believing. So Autumn shared in the chat, being mindful of our language that is used and making sure our resources like our hotline is accessible for male survivors. Sometimes resources and language inadvertently excludes male survivors, so being mindful of the language we use about assault and survivors. Absolutely, right? Again, this requires, one of the things I encourage you to do is to ask male survivors that you have provided services to, whether they're current clients or former clients, right? Bring them together, have a focus group, ask them questions, interview them, learn about what worked and what didn't work. How can we do better by you? How can we support you better? Where did we where did we not meet your expectations, or where did we fail you? Right? These are important questions. They may be difficult to hear. I don't want to hear that as an advocate. I don't want to hear that as an organization, that we may have failed survivors. But when it comes to boys and men, it's really important that we ask these hard questions, not just of our organization, but of ourselves as advocates. So Susan said, I'm excited about the resources online. I'm always looking for those to help with the situations we face. Absolutely. So many wonderful resources. I wish there were more, right? I wish there were more resources, but this is the best collection of resources. And it's a living, breathing document. You'll see that it's a Google document. And Megan, at this point, you can drop it in the chat, right? I want you to have it now. I don't want you to have to wait till the very end of today's session, but check it out, because I've referred to it already multiple times. So Megan's going to drop it in the chat for you. You can access it, you can share it, you can download it as a PDF. And you can share it with folks. Share the link with male survivors. But those are they has the name of the organization, a link to the organization, and a description of the organization in terms of the services that they provide. I think the most important thing about resources is you want to ensure that the resource that you're sharing is appropriate. Not every resource that's in this list may be appropriate for a survivor, may be more appropriate for an advocate, more appropriate for an educator, maybe more appropriate for a family member or friend. So explore the resource, right? Go to that website, watch, read that resource. Like, you want to familiarize yourself with the entire resource collection. so that you know when and how to share that resource, how to add it to your resource collection, your website, to your social media. These are all ways that we can ensure, again, that we're providing the most appropriate services to male survivors of sexual violence. All right. Thank you, Megan, for dropping that in the chat. There are 30 people here? What? Welcome to the new people that just joined us. Or if you've been here and I'm just noticing that you're here, welcome. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this issue of emergency housing, right? Because it's a really tough one. I got my start as an advocate in the shelter in Austin with SAFE. Shout out to all my SAFE folks here. Thank you so much for joining us. So when I first started as an advocate, I started as a children's advocate and worked in the battered women's shelter in Austin. But like you heard in the title, Battered Women's Center of Austin, right? So the shelter that I worked in only provided shelter to women and women with children. There was no space at the time dedicated for male survivors. If there was a male survivor of domestic or sexual violence, they would be placed in a hotel or a motel. But now if you go to Safe Place, they actually have a shelter facility that has private spaces for male survivors, right? For other folks who may not necessarily fit the majority of the clients that you serve at your shelter, right? Most of us work at dual centers, right? Providing domestic violence and sexual assault services. And one of the services that we provide is housing, emergency housing for folks who have been impacted by domestic violence. But we know that that's not the only issue that many of our survivors face. Many of them are survivors of sexual violence. And so that also includes men. So in this particular section, we're going to find some resources, some guidance in terms of equipping our emergency shelter providers with policies and procedures to improve access to emergency housing, right? To think creatively, to think outside of the box about how we can provide and not just put them in a hotel where they don't have the same access to the service and support that girls and women have or that families have in a shelter facility, right? So I want us to think creatively. That may require additional resources that we address in the section for us to think about how we can do that. How can we ensure that boys and men feel safe and comfortable, especially male survivors of sexual violence in that space? Not just them, but the girls and women who are living there, the other families, the single women, whatever that shelter facility looks like, you want to ensure that boys and men feel safe and comfortable in that space with them, and that they have access again to the same services, right? That we are all required to provide. Right? We want to make sure that our services are accessible to anyone, regardless of their gender, regardless of their age, regardless of their religion, regardless of their ability, right? We want to ensure that all of our services are accessible, but especially emergency housing. So this particular section really helps us to explore that. What does that look like? How do we ensure that folks feel comfortable and safe in our shelter facilities, especially if they're boys and men who are victims and survivors of sexual violence? Like I said, reaching out to male survivors of sexual violence is key, right? How do male survivors know that we provide services? It requires for us to go out into the community, to inform, to educate. And so in this section, you're going to find that we lay out strategies, tools, resources for rape crisis centers to reach male survivors in their communities. But you know who the best messengers are? Or other male survivors. Other boys and men that are volunteers, who are on your board, who work for your organization. There's something about men like myself reaching and talking and educating and raising awareness with other men. That's a strategy. It's not the only strategy, because historically, and we know prior to boys and men volunteering and working for our centers, that girls and women did this work way before us as men. And so I just want to acknowledge that history, right? That I'm here because of girls and women, because of all the efforts that previously before me, right? When I tell you about when I first started working at the shelter at SAFE, and I'm sure, I don't know if the folks from SAFE know this history, but I want to share it because it's important. Prior to me working at SAFE, at the SAFE shelter here in Austin, There were never any men. There was no men other than maintenance workers, other than delivery folks, other than law enforcement officers that ever came into the shelter facility. It was all women advocates, right? Women staff, women, single women, women with children, no men in that facility until I started working there. That was more than I've been here at TAASA for 17 years. It's probably more than 20 years ago. Now, if you ask the folks from SAFE, are there other men at work there at the shelter? They will tell you yes. And hopefully there's more than one, right? I want us to understand that when we open that door, when we open the possibility for men to be present in the work, other men follow us. Maybe this is not the best example, but other men will follow us, right? When we shatter, when we shatter that barrier, right, that exists for many organizations, right, for many different reasons, I understand, right? But when SAFE shattered that reality that up to that point didn't have men volunteer. There are countless men who are volunteer at the shelter now in Austin. And that's true around the state of Texas. So you now have male staff, you have male volunteers, you have male board members, you have male donors, you have, many of you have male partners that may help and volunteer and support you in the work that you're doing, right? So men have an important role, right? The more men that are visible within our organization, the more men in our community will see and feel that your organization is also for them. That's the most effective way at reaching out to male survivors, is just seeing men present, not just in person, but also online on your website, on your social media, right? These are all ways to reach male survivors in your community. So you're kind of getting a taste of what's included in the guidance document. So as we move through this, so if you have any questions or comments about anything I say, drop those things in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. If you're doing them really well, share examples in the chat with us. All of you are doing some of these things. So I'm maybe speaking to the choir. So you guys are just sitting silently and you're like, I know all this stuff. I'm the greatest that ever was. And you are. I'm so proud of you if you're already doing these things. But even if you feel like, man, we're doing it. We're doing it, Emiliano. That's great. But what more can we do? Right? That space for growth, that space for creativity. How do we expand what we're doing? That's the challenge that I want to leave you with today. All right. So that's why we use words like broadening, increasing, right? So broadening community education efforts on male survivors. A lot of folks don't understand the experiences of male survivors. They've never heard Jorge's story as an example. So one of the things that we think is really important is that we build and raise awareness about male survivors, not just during SAM, not just during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, but every day of the year. So if you're active on social media, if you have a social media presence, talk about male survivors, share their stories, share news stories, right? We know that male survivors exist in our community, that unfortunately there are stories of male survivors, right? And so share those stories. That's an important way to raise awareness about male survivors in our community. So examine the work of community educators, right? Your role, if you're a community educator like myself prior to coming to TAASA, I know how valuable and important that work is. I know my presence here today, when I talk to people in the hallway, right? When I do this webinar as the men's engagement specialist, I'm raising that awareness. Every time I speak, every time I talk about this issue, I'm raising awareness. It's not just your job. This is what we do as people, right? So I want to encourage you to have these conversations with the boys and men in your life. Tell them about today's session, what you learned, what were some of the takeaways, and how important it is for them to know that if something happens to them, if they've experienced some form of sexual abuse, that they can come and tell you. Especially if you're a parent like myself of a boy, I encourage you to have this conversation with your son tonight, your grandson, your nephew, right? Have this conversation, make sure that they know that if they have these kinds of experiences, that you are there to listen, to help them, to protect them. So again, that's part of our job, to raise awareness, to talk about these issues, right? There's opportunities in every conversation that we have. Again, with our friends, our family members, our coworkers, the people that we worship with, we're using that opportunity to educate and to raise awareness about this issue. So this is what we want to do, right? And we don't just do that through trainings and presentations and campaigns. It happens through conversations, right? So when anybody asks you, and this happens to me all the time, when they say, "What do you do? Where do you work?" And I say, "Oh, I'm a men's engagement specialist at TAASA." "Oh, well, let me tell you, this happened to me. This happened to my loved one. This happened to my friend." I have many men who come to me, who reach out to me on social media, who find me, like they find us online, and they reach out to me. "He's the men's engagement specialist. I should email him, call him, DM him." And when they do, they disclose their own experiences of sexual abuse. Know that you're that person, and because of just the work that you do, that you're going to be that person that they go to, that they tell. And like I said, sometimes for the first time. So Elia shared that she goes to the Mexican consulate twice a month, and I'm happy that many men come to ask for information. Absolutely, right? Unfortunately, we know for many men who migrate to this country, may have experienced some form of sexual abuse, sexual harassment during that migration, right? May experience it at the hands of their in their workplace or in their community, right? And so we know that their immigration status can be used as a way to control them. So we know that while that's true for girls and women who are undocumented, who are immigrants or refugees in this country, we also know that the same thing happens to boys and men, that they are trafficked, they are harassed, right? So we know that sexual violence is not just an act of violence, it's also an act of coercion, right? It's an act of power and oppression, like all these things that we know that many men experience, right? We experience sexual violence mostly at the hands of people that we know, that we love, that we live with, right? We're kind of conditioned to think that it's a stranger danger, but the reality is that most men who perpetrate sexual violence are known to the male survivor, right? Whether that's a coach, a mentor, a teacher, a religious leader, a family member, a friend, right? That's why it's so difficult for boys and men to come forward to disclose their abuse, because these are men who are known, who are loved, who we respect, admire, that we look up to, right? So we have to acknowledge the reality of sexual violence, but we also know that men experience sexual violence in different forms, not necessarily just directly as victims and survivors, but their partner may be a survivor. They may witness sexual violence, right? They may have been exposed to other forms of sexual harassment or sexual abuse, right? These are all things that we have to work diligently and ensure that we're addressing. That it's not just the act of being raped or molested or having some unwanted experience of sexual contact, but it's all these other things that happen to boys and men in our communities that may not even be physical acts of sexual violence, maybe verbal acts or witnessing or observing or being shown, um, pornography, for example, as children, or being groomed, or any of these things that we know are part of the experience of boys and men who experience sexual violence. So, there's so much for us to learn, but this is opportunity every time we speak about this issue for us to listen, to pay attention to the boys and men that are in the room, and to ensure that they feel seen and heard, and that they know that you are going to believe them, that you're going to listen, that you're going to be there for them, that that regardless of what their experience is that you're a resource for them as well. So that's part of our community education. So thank you, Elia, for sharing that. I think that's inspiring work. And if you are fortunate to work with the Mexican consulate in your community, please do. They're a great collaborator, an important partner, and there's opportunities to inform and to educate citizens, not just of Mexico, but other Latin American countries, right? So if you work in a large community with immigrants and refugees, there's opportunities for you to collaborate with those organizations, those institutions, those places of worship, those organizations that are providing services to that group. There's opportunity there to educate them. But again, the best folks to do that work are people who are part of those communities, right? Who speak the language, who understand the culture, right? Who are from those neighborhoods, right? How do we partner with those people to raise awareness and to reach male survivors in their community? How do we inform? How do we empower? How do we educate them to be advocates in their community, right? Because again, we know that a male survivor is more likely to tell his family member, his friend, his coworker, his classmate than he is to tell you or to go into the sexual assault program, right? To come to your office, to call your 24-hour hotline, he's more likely to tell somebody in his circle. And so if we can empower, if we can educate and train those individuals to be advocates, to inform, to be a resource, to be a listening ear for male survivors, our work is done, right? That's what we want to do, is we want to empower everybody to support victims and survivors in our community so that the burden is not on us. We already know this is hard work. For many of you, regardless of how long you've been doing this work, you know how difficult this work is. I'm happy that you're here. But in order for us to do that, to do this work, we have to share the burden, the responsibility of supporting survivors of sexual violence, right? So this particular section really inspires us and empowers us to partner with our community to help share that load. Questions, comments, keep them going. All right. So one of the things we talked about earlier was about enhancing support group services for male survivors of sexual violence, right? We know this is really key. One of the most effective strategy, like I said earlier, one of the things that Men Healing is doing is providing peer support groups. They've developed a phenomenal curriculum. They don't share this curriculum, right? But they train other male survivors and other clinicians that partner with those male survivors to facilitate these peer-led support groups online, which is a phenomenal resource. They ask for it's a low budget project. And so in order to sustain it, they ask for a small donation that helps to pay for the cost of this program for the clinicians, as well as the materials and promoting the program. So you'll notice that when you go and you go to Men Healing to learn about the peer support group, there's a small cost, but for most men, if they can't afford it, they work with them and they allow them to participate in the peer-led support groups for free. So go to Men Healing, follow them on social media. They're a great resource for male survivors. And I encourage you to promote their work, right? You don't have to be the go-to, like we were talking about earlier, for every survivor in your community, right? We want to empower and ensure that regardless of where people go, that people understand how to support them. So this section delves into the benefits of support groups for male survivors and offers recommendations, not curriculum, but recommendations for augmenting these services, because there is no one curriculum. There are many curriculums. And so in this section, we help you think about what does that look like? How can we be responsive to the men in our community? Megan.
Sorry, Emiliano, we just wanted to pause to let you know that Savannah in the chat said that she wasn't sure if this was intentional, but their screen shows a gray screen that says screen sharing has been paused. And I'm curious if anybody else is seeing that as well. Please let me know in the chat and we'll see if we can troubleshoot and get that worked out.
Oh, no, you're right.
Okay, yeah, there's Christine and Selena are saying that as well. So Susan, okay.
So no, thank you. This is why we need you folks. And this is why I apologize for that. I just noticed that. Can you see the screen now?
I can see it. I'm curious if anybody else can see it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, they can see it.
Good,
Perfect.
good, good. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate that, Megan. I apologize and I apologize that that we didn't catch that on our end. So I apologize. I must have pressed something. See, Zoom is very mysterious. And you have to be careful what you press on Zoom. So for those folks who present online know what I'm talking about. So I apologize for that. Thank you so much for letting us know. I really appreciate that. So you've been missing all the beautiful graphics from Maddie. You're just hearing me talk, talk, talk. Emiliano's floating talking head. That's fun. So I apologize for that. So yeah, support groups. Check it out. And if you're doing support groups, let us know in the chat. If you're offering support groups, if that's something you're doing and you're doing well, or if you developed your own curriculum for male survivors, let me know. I'd love to see that. I'd love to share that with folks. This is really an opportunity for you to share resources and connect with each other as a resource. And so if you're doing any of this, please drop it in the chat. All right. So this is the place where we talk a little bit about the male resources, and Megan's going to drop it again in the chat. So thank you, Megan, for doing that. So in the male survivor guidance document, you'll find a collection of these resources. These are the go-to resources. You'll notice that it's only a few pages. That's all that exists, unfortunately. Now, there may be local resources that are available to male survivors. You want to include those resources for your hotline advocates, for your hospital advocates, for your organizational advocates, excuse me. But these are some phenomenal resources that exist, including publications, campaigns, male survivor resources. So these are the resources that you want to share with male survivors. General advocate resources. So these are resources specifically for advocates. For you, these are films, documentaries. Highly recommend that you watch them and check them out and hold your own screenings, your own community-based screenings. Again, not just during April, because it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We're going to raise awareness about male survivors. Do that every month, every day, right? Make sure that if you are the social media manager, if you do social media for your organization, that you're including information and resources. There's so much content. Men Healing, for example, has created so much amazing content. There's no reason you can just share their content every day, as an example. So you don't even need to create it. You just share it. There's so many amazing resources on Instagram, Facebook, on Blue Sky, on X, right? Retweet, reshare, like all of these amazing resources, right? So you don't have to create any of them, whether they're just graphics, whether they're videos, whether they're particular resource, share away. That's the most important thing that you can do, right? So that people who are following you understand that you value, that you support, that your services are accessible to them as well. So it's a great way for you to share these resources with folks. So definitely please do that. And so thank you, Megan, for dropping that in the chat. Check out that resource, share it. That link again is a living, breathing document. And so I may add to it. So if you have a particular resource of interest, none of these organizations pay to be included in this resource. I just want to say that would be ridiculous. But yeah, I think these are some of the best resources that exist. And of course, there are other ones. And so again, if you come across anything that you think should be added to this document, please send it my way and I will review it and hopefully if it's something that I think is important, I'll add it, but add it to your resources, right? Create your own collection of resources, but I want you to use this as a start for your organizational resources. We have about 5 minutes, correct, Megan? All right, let's wrap this thing up. So what are our next steps, right? Why are we here? I already gave away the secret spice, the secret formula. This guidance document, again, you're going to be the first to receive this. Like, honestly, I am going to send this to y'all as soon as the PDF is available. You get it first before anybody else, right? Before we announce it to the broader field, before we send copies to all of our sexual assault programs here in Texas. Let me tell you what we're doing, how we're using the guidance document, because this is more of an opportunity for you and for me and for us to partner with each other. So of course, we're going to publish and print the guidance document. We're going to send it to all of our sexual assault programs. Probably going to send 1 or 2 copies to your organization. So there may be 15, 20, SAFE has, I don't know how many folks SAFE has now, but it's probably in the hundreds, right? Across multiple departments, right? Hawk and Rape Crisis Center in San Antonio, and all the big centers in Austin and El Paso and everywhere. They may have like tons of staff, and then you have rural communities that have 5 people, right? Hopefully we can send you all copies of like print copies so that you each have your own copy. But we know now paper is old news, right? We're all using PDFs. So save that link to the PDF, download it, have it available on your desktop, share it as a resource. So a PDF will be available as well that you can print. You can print in-house, you can make copies of, you can highlight, you can make notes in, you can mark up, and you can make faces, you can color in the guys, and you use it as a coloring book. I don't care what you do with the copy, as long as you use it and you read the whole thing and you reach out to me. You'll see my name throughout the publication, and it'll tell you, reach out to Emiliano for support and technical assistance. So one of the things that we're doing is we're going to be providing training and technical assistance on the 6 sections of the guidance document. So for each of the sections that I overview today, we'll be providing some really comprehensive training on each of those sections, as well as some technical assistance in terms of your organization, applying some of those practices, policies. We are here and we are prepared. I'm ready. I'm so freaking excited to help you implement the guidance in this document. You get to determine where you want to go, what you want to focus on. Of course, none of this is mandatory. It's not attached to your funding. You're not being required to do this. This is just, again, another tool in your toolbox that I hope you will use. And then we're going to develop and distribute supplemental materials, right? So on the 6 sections. So as you're implementing, as you're trying to apply some of the things that I've learned, again, from my research, from male survivors, from other advocates around the state and the country, we're going to provide some additional materials, resources, podcasts. We're going to be developing some really wonderful supplemental materials that you can use that will help to kind of provide some guidance and encouragement in applying some of these practices, because we know this is long-term work, right? I've been here at TAASA for 17 years, people, and TAASA has been around for almost 50 years doing this work. But unfortunately, we know that sexual violence has increased in our communities around the state of Texas. So we still have a tremendous amount of work to do. And we know that people who are impacted by sexual violence include boys and men. And maybe we haven't really done our due diligence, or we haven't put a lot of thought or effort or resources to male survivors, but this is our opportunity. This is the time and this is the place for us to do the work, and you don't have to do this work alone. I am prepared to guide you and to work with you and support you on that journey. So I want you to think about the following, right? I want you to put this on a Post-it. I want you to put this on your computer. I want you to put this on your desk, on your refrigerator, wherever in the bathroom. I don't care where you put it, on your mirror, not above the toilet, but above on your mirror, on your bathroom. What section of the guidance document do you want to explore further? Right now that you've heard about this guidance document, hopefully you're as excited as I am about getting your hands on it. And what do you want to work on? Right? It could be applicable to the work that you do as an advocate or an educator. What is it that you want to work on? What are you excited about? Right? Hopefully I've inspired you. I hope that when you get this, you will think about, what is it that I want to work on? And you will focus on that section, and you will work through that guidance document until you're successfully implementing the practices and the policies of each section, and you feel successful, you feel like you've been effective. Then you move on to the next section. And then you complete the whole guidance document, and I'm done. We have the best services for male survivors in all of the state of Texas, right? That's what I want to hear from you. That's where I want you to be, is to have that kind of attitude that we are providing the best services for all victims and survivors of sexual violence, including boys and men. So one of the things that I want to encourage you to do is I want you to think about what is your takeaway from today's workshop. I want you to make a note of it. What did you learn today? What did you feel today? What were you surprised about? And you can share that in chat on your way out. It's almost 3 o'clock. Thank you again. Please complete the feedback. Your feedback's important to me. It's completely anonymous, but I want to hear your thoughts about today's workshop. I want to appreciate you and thank you. So on your way out, drop your line. I figured out, I appreciated, I felt challenged, blank. So drop that in the chat if you can on your way out. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the remainder of the virtual conference. Please reach out to me if I can be of any support, encouragement, if I can provide you or your organization any training or technical assistance. Please let me know. My contact information is on the screen. Oh, Elia, you're amazing for being here. Thank you so much for the love, and I appreciate all of you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, and have a great summer. Stay safe, and enjoy the rest of the virtual conference. Thank you, everybody.
Before we wrap up, I want to take the time to thank Emiliano so much for this presentation, as well as thank the interpreters, Susanna and Alejandra. Thank you so much for all of the hard work that you've done to make sure that this is accessible to everybody. And I hope that everybody had a good time.
Yeah, look at all the wonderful comments. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm glad you feel better about assisting with male survivors. That was my goal today. If there's one person that feels that way, I've done my job, and that's only possible because you're here today. And so thank you so much for your support and your participation. And Megan and Nana, thank you as well for your support. And everybody have a great day. Great information, very useful. I felt challenged. Way to go. So happy to hear it. Good luck. And